Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. So today's video, what can I run for the 2 mile, 3K, and 5K if I run this for the mile? This is a question that a lot of folks ask me on TikTok. So I want to do a video about this. And I'm going to break it down. Okay. I'm going to go from 6 minutes all the way down to 4 minutes in every 10-second increments too. So I had this stuff for you. It'll be up on the screen in slides in a minute. I just want to give you the heads up too. I'm going to do another follow-up to this live stream, and it's going to be what can I run for the 800 and the 400 based on what I run for the mile. Why is that important? Well, now it gives you two reference points. Now you can look back and say, okay, my athletes or myself, we might be closer to the longer stuff than we are the shorter stuff, right? And if that's the case, we need to work on speed development. On the flip side, if we're closer to the shorter stuff than the longer stuff, then we need to work on aerobic development. So it'll give you a lot of information as a coach, especially, and as an athlete. And also it'll tell you, are we strong enough to come back and run a double in the 4x8 or 4x4, whatever it might be? Are we fit enough to do that, right? So these videos are going to give you a lot of intel. Hey, Jack, and anybody that has questions, put them in the comments, okay? Bring your questions, okay? You remember, Jack? That's good, man. So, and this is important. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're here. But without further ado, let's get right into this, okay? Let's put the first slide up. And again, what can I run for the 2 mile or 3,200 and 5,000 meters if I run this for a mile? Okay, let's get right into this. Now, starting at 6 minutes, you'll see here. 6-minute mile tells you can run about 12:48 for the 2 miles, which is 6:24 per mile, and 20:30 for 5K, which is 6:36 per mile. Now, again, there are some exceptions. You might be faster in a 2 mile or 5K. You might be slower. But again, your training will tell you. And the reason why I like to test folks at a mile is because it's a very accurate indicator of your current fitness. If you got about 6 to 8 weeks of basic running under your belt, you can accurately test your fitness in over a mile. And that will tell you a lot. And you'll also be able to tell you, whether you've gone out too fast, whether you slow down a lot, whether you ran it even, whether you've maintained a progressive pace as well throughout the mile too. So it gives you a lot of intel. So now, if you run a 550 for the mile, you're at about 12:24 for 3,200, 6:12 per mile. Okay. Then that also puts you at 19:56 for the 5K and 6:25 per mile. If you're at 540 per the mile, 12:04 for the 3,200, 6:02 per mile, and 19:24 for the 5K, which is 6:15 per mile. Okay. If you're at 530 for the mile, it's at 11:42 for 3,200, which is 5:51 per mile, and 18:51 for 5K, which is 6:04 per mile. If you're at 520 for the mile, you're at 11:22 for 3,200, 5:41 per mile, or 18:18 for the 5K, and 5:53 per mile. If you're at a 510 for the mile, you can run about 11 minutes for the 2 mile, or 3,200, 5:30 per mile, or 17:44 for the 5K, which is 5:43 per mile. And then if you're at 5 minutes for the mile, puts you at about 10:38 for 3,200, 5:19 a mile, and 17:11 for the 5,000, 5:32 per mile. Now I'm gonna leave this slide up for a second. Are you noticing anything? Okay, if you look at it, for every 10-second improvement in the mile, it's about a 20-second improvement or so for the 3,200, and a 30-second improvement, or almost a 30-second improvement in the 5K. Okay, so that'll tell you a lot right there of how much improvement you have available to you and what you need to do to work yourself towards those distances. And again, this is one reason I'm a component of speed development. And then let me take this off the screen. VO2 max work, threshold training, tempo runs, right? Long runs, and all this type of stuff. Because it gives you a balanced training program, right? Speed development is going to help your ability to run a faster mile and come back in a double, or 4x8, 4x4, whatever. It also puts you in a position to tap into your speed. On the flip side, VO2 max initial, which is tempo runs and threshold, and VO2 max specific, which is essentially 3K pace and 5K pace with 1-to-1 work to rest ratios, that puts you in a position to get closer to the mile. But they all work together. And the fitter you are, the easier it is to tap into your speed at the end of a mile race, right? Because you never really know. There are going to be races where you go out hard from the gun, where you run even, where it's sit and kick. And a well-balanced training program will have you ready for all those scenarios. And the fitter you are, the easier it's going to be to take advantage of those scenarios and tap into what you need to tap into, what your athletes need to tap into. He or she, doesn't matter. Okay? So I just wanted to point these things out. These are really, really important things to talk about. And again, if you have questions, put them in the comments. That's what I'm here for. Okay? Next up, we'll get to the next slide. Okay? Back at it. 450 mile. You're at about 10:16 for 3,200, 508 per mile. Or 16:38 for 5K, 520 per mile. You have 440 a mile. It's 9:56 for 3,200, 458 a mile. And 16:04 for 5K, 510 per mile. 430 at the mile. You're at 9:35 for 3,200, which is 447 a mile. 15:30 for a 5K, 458 a mile. If you have 420 for the mile, 9:14 for 3,200, 437 a mile, and 14:56 for 5K, 449 per mile pace. If you have 410 per mile, you're at 8:52 for 3,200, 426 per mile, or 14:22 for 5K, 438 per mile pace. And then at 4 minutes per the mile, you're at 8:31 for 3,200, which is 415 a mile, and 13:48 for 5K, which is 427 per mile. I wanted you to get an idea of what the 5K component was too, because it's not as applicable for high school runners as it is for college runners, because generally high school runners don't really run the 5K that often, with the exception of cross country and maybe an occasional track race. And a lot of high school races are heavily interval trained, right? So they run a mile, come back in a 4x8, a 2 mile, come back, and whatever it might be. But it gives you an idea of what your capabilities are based on what you can run for these miles. Okay, because that's what you would be running in college if you raced in college. Okay, but it gives you an idea of what you can handle, what you can do. And again, there are exceptions to the rule. There will be people who will be faster in certain events, people will be slower in certain events. And this is another reason why I want to do that other live stream, to give you intel on the 800 and 400. That way you can write it all down for yourselves. And if you need to watch this afterward, you can watch it afterward and write everything down. Say, my athletes are here. Okay, we want to be here. What do we need to do in between there? Okay, and we've talked about training paces for this type of stuff. And if you want me to do a live stream on training paces based on these particular things, let me know and I'll do that as well. Morgan, hello, gang. Might be dumb, and there's no dumb questions. You can ask any question you want. This can be applied to, yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely can be applied to cross country. Or there are times they apply it to racing on the track. I mean, generally, racing on the track is the most where you can get your most accurate indication of your fitness, but there are people who run fast in cross country as well. So if somebody's struggling with longer stuff, what could you recommend to fix that? When you say struggling with longer stuff, longer races, is that what you're saying? But yeah, back to your question, Morgan. I mean, it could apply. I mean, those are essentially track equivalents, but some people will be able to run that in cross country. But again, this is why speed development is important during cross country too, because even if you're running hills, you got to tap into your speed, right? So Mark, 3,205K. So this is where I'm talking about. This is where tempo runs are important. I've got a video on this channel on how to build tempo runs, 20 to 25 minutes from scratch, okay? Which will make it easier for you to get to those 3,200 5K equivalents and threshold workouts, whether it be threshold 800s or threshold Ks, threshold 1200s, and so on with 1 minute recoveries. And this is a way of slowing things down in practice to help you gain fitness and run faster in races. So threshold and tempos, if you're not doing them now, Mark, I highly encourage you to incorporate it. Okay. And then it makes it easier to incorporate VO2 max work, which is 3K pace and 5K pace. So it's essentially like, let's say you're doing 5 times a 600 or 6 times a 600 at 3K pace with a 2 minute recovery, or 5 times 1K at 5K pace with a 3 minute recovery. Okay. It makes it VO2 max when it's a 1-to-1 work rest ratio, if that makes sense. So heal from plantar fasciitis, very slowly. Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, get on soft surfaces, get in the pool. Plantar fasciitis is a tough one. It's a frustrating ordeal. I mean, get some orthotics, run on soft surfaces when you are running. Foam roll your bottom of your feet, your plantars, roll them on a ball, whether it be baseball or like that. The rollers kind of break through some of the scar tissue that might be there. But Plantar fasciitis, you've got to be smart when you come back. So the easiest way to heal is kind of cross train, get in the pool, low impact to no impact, but still work on your engine, your cardiovascular. You have an all-county race on Thursday. You want to go under 457-ish. Current PR is 508. I know I'm in much better shape. What can you do to increase your pop tomorrow? Well, nothing really you do today is going to kick in tomorrow. Just do an easy run with a couple of strides again. You could also do, 457. It's essentially 74 per lap. So at the end of your run today, run 474. Get that pace. Make sure you go out 37 and come back in 74, right? Get a feel for that rhythm that you're going to run, that you want to run tomorrow, Jack. Just one lap, okay? Just try that. And then if you want to do a second one, you can do a second one, but no more than 2. But lock into that pace, 74. And again, 74, I don't mean 35, right? And third back to 39. I mean 37 and 37, whatever it might be. Run even as even as possible. It makes it easier to be stronger towards the end of a race if you do that. So finally feeling on 2 miles today. Started the week off with very high mileage. Yeah, I mean, it's fine, Jack. You generally don't need to taper from the beginning of the week to the end of the week. If you're going to taper, like, drop the volume for the week and keep it even across the board. That way your body can adapt to it. And if you're going to taper also, it might be good to taper for a couple of weeks, depending on how often you're racing. So taper is important too. Taper is important. It's increasing in volume needs adaptation. So does decreasing in volume. That also needs adaptation. What's your mileage for cross country? It depends on the year of school you are, Edward. It depends on how much you're used to running now. A lot of coaches differ on volume. I generally have a basic layout of the type of volume that I recommend for the athletes that I coach in high school and college. And then you kind of build around that. Some people need a little bit more, some people need a little bit less, and that's fine. This is where the individualization of the sport comes into play, because you have to factor in individual needs too. Double threshold days, only if your volume's high and bound to it, and you've got to be ready for it. If you're not mastering single thresholds, it doesn't make sense to do double thresholds yet. Are you doing single thresholds is the question. You recommend threshold on Tuesday and tempo on Thursday? Not necessarily. On a non-race week, I recommend Tuesday and Friday workouts. And let's just say you do a 2-week cycle, just for arbitrary reasons. The first week is a threshold or tempo that Tuesday. That Friday, you can do like a VO2 max at 5K pace, which is faster than the threshold or tempo, right? The following week, Tuesday, you do 3K pace, right? And then that Friday, you can do mile pace and 800-meter pace. Now you've addressed most of the systems that you're going to be addressing in a 2-week cycle, and which is very repeatable as well. And you can kind of maneuver it to that. And then you can incorporate speed development at some point during the week as well. But if you're not racing, I definitely think it's a good idea to give yourself an extra day in between workouts. If you are racing, I would just do a workout Tuesday, some light speed on Thursday, and then you race on Saturday. I wouldn't do a threshold and a tempo in the week if you're racing. So during your summer base, and build fitness without speed work. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you want to build fitness without speed work. I mean, obviously, you don't need race-specific speed work in the summer. Just strides. If you look at my summer base training programs, I have the same thing. Like I generally, let's just say you have 12 weeks, right? First 4 weeks, you get up to your goal mileage. Then the second 4-week cycle, you add uphill sprints one day and flat sprints another day, right? Let's just say it's 5 times a 50 uphill one day, 5 times 100 on the flats later on, or something like that, right? And then the next block is, and then you can start to add some threshold or tempo, the last 4-week cycle, that kind of gets you ready for the cross-country season without doing too much of that stuff too soon. But you're adding a new dynamic to the training each 4 weeks, and it generally takes about 3 to 4 weeks to adapt to a certain change in your training, if that makes sense. So, but that's definitely doable. 1630 for the 6-week base and 4 weeks of normal training. I would do 10 weeks. I would do 10 weeks of base. And each cycle, or 10 to 12 weeks. And you cycle, you add something every couple of weeks to the base. Okay? You don't need 4 weeks of normal training before the season. And what I don't what you mean by like workouts and workouts where you don't really need that, before the season. And and you're welcome, Mason. My pleasure, man. I'm glad you find it helpful. And it's up to you to you and your coach to decide. But what I found most helpful as a coach is kind of getting the athletes ready to race when cross country season starts without compromising fitness, without having them too tired, without having them to do too much work too soon. Because when they do too much work too soon, or when they race too much, then they run their best races 4 to 6 weeks too early, and then they're fried come championships. So that's something timeline needs to be factored into the training, and how often your athletes race needs to be factored into the training. So, and if you're racing more often, you don't want to be doing as many workouts. Okay, because essentially a race is going to be considered a workout. So you've got to be careful with that. There's got to be a balance. You have a Friday and your trainers want to dry needle me for 10 minutes a day before. Is it right? Dry needle you? What does that mean? Dry needle you for 10 minutes the day before. Is it recommended? What does that mean, Edward? I want to make sure I understand. From 1635 case 10 to 204. Can't seem to crack 440. Okay. Are you doing tempo runs, Q? Or threshold workout? I mean, your fitness, had you close. 440. You want to get the 2 mile down a little bit. If you want to crack 440, you should be closer to 10 minutes, or close to breaking 10 minutes. 545 to 550 pace for your tempos. What's your mile best, Q? Right now, your mile best. Well, it's not prediction, Mason. It's going to be an 800 and 400. This is what your capabilities are for 800 and 400 based on a mile. That's coming out in a couple days, Mason. I'll be live again to go over that. I'm working on the slides now. I'll be finishing them today later on to kind of go over this, and that way you can watch both videos again and look and say again, just write stuff down and say, okay, this is where I'm at. This is where my athletes are at. Now I have something tangible to look at in front of me, and tell me exactly what I need to do, right? To either work on the last part of the mile race, so work on this, and so on and so forth. So if you're 444, you got to be 540 to 545. You want to work that down to 540 to 545 right now, Q, if you can, but for only 20 minutes. Cut it at 20 minutes, and then take a 5-minute recovery, and then run a couple of 200s afterward, or do threshold work, right? If you're going to do 20 minutes of tempo, do 6 or 7 times an 800 with a 1-minute recovery at threshold pace. If tempo pace is 540 to 545, then threshold pace is 530 to 535. So you're running essentially 247 to 248, something like that for 800 meter reps, times 6 or 7 with a 1-minute recovery. Okay, you take that same pace and you bump it up to 1K reps times 5, then 1,200 meter reps times 4 or 5. The same recovery, the same pace. Okay, and let those set yourself up. But you can also do VO2 max 3K stuff, Q, like 4 times an 800, right? Or 5 times an 800 at 228 to 230 with a 230 recovery. That's VO2 max. And that's 2 mile specific also. So that'll help get your 2 mile down. If you can get to the point where you can do 5 to 6 of those at 10-minute pace, that's going to help you drop your 2 mile. That'll also help you with your mile, right? Drop mileage. I would maintain. See, this is the other thing too. This is a good question. So it depends on, and this is one reason I encourage folks to schedule a day off. So let's just say high school. What I do is my freshmen and sophomores, they have off every Sunday, right? My juniors off every other Sunday. My seniors off every other Sunday. And then college is a little bit different, but that off day every so often makes it easier to not have to drastically drop mileage at any point in time because you're training and recovering at the same time simultaneously, right? So, and if you're doing a 7-day week and a 6-day week, so let's just say you're running, let's just say 56 miles, which is 8 miles per day. average. On a 56-mile week, when you do a 6-mile week, I mean, 6-day week, you're going to run 48, which is still an average of 8 per day. You're averaging the same amount of mileage per day whether you're running 6 days or 7 days. Okay, that means you don't have to make any drastic changes to your training. So a lot of folks I'm come across they feel like they need to make up the mileage because they have a day off. That defeats the purpose of the day off. Yeah, I want to average the same amount of mileage as you do on a 7-day week as you do a 6-day week. And that way you can get the benefit of a day off because you'll need it. If you're doing the right training and the right things with your long runs and everything else, that off day is going to really come in handy. Does that make sense? Q, does that make sense? So again, tempo for you, try 540 to 545 pace. And threshold pace, 530 to 535 pace. Okay. So essentially 245 to 247, right? For 800-meter reps and so on. 1K reps at the same pace, 1,200-meter reps at the same pace. And that's the threshold pace based on the 444. Once you get under 440, as you start to progress in the mile, and again, like I said, if you drop 5 seconds in a mile, I mean, that should get you about 10 seconds in the 2 mile and 15 seconds or so in a 5K. If you do 10 seconds, that's 20 seconds in a 2 mile, 30 seconds in a 5K. So this gives you the opportunity to track this. Okay. Tempo pace for 9:17 for 3,200 tie. So that's 4:38. Yeah, about 5:15 to 5:20. You're pretty much spot on. But are you doing threshold workouts? You want to do threshold workouts at about 5:10 pace, right? Which is 2:35 for 800s. So let's just say times 6 with a 1-minute recovery, right? 5:10 pace, which is about 3:10 or so for 1K reps, times 5 with a 1-minute recovery, right? So threshold pace is about 8 to 10 seconds faster per mile than tempo run pace. And you base it off of your current mile best. Okay. And the reason why I did this video is that it'll tell you if you're slower in the 3K and the 5K, the 2 mile and the 5K than you are in the mile. That tells you, like, so Ty, what do you run for a mile? You're at 9:17, which is impressive. That's good stuff. What do you run for the mile? Mason's at 2:03, 800-meter race. Anything's possible, Mason. If you run it right, if you're doing the right training, I mean, 2:03 is not far. That 2-minute barrier is a bittersweet barrier because it's so tough to get and so tough to miss. But once you're under it, it's like, and it's so refreshing once you are in it. 9:17 and doubled in the mile, 4:25 and 2 hours later, which is your current. So I don't know if you saw this. Ty, I'm going to put this back up. 4:25 has you at 9:20, 9:14. So you're at 9:17, you're 4:25. So you're in between this right here, right? So yeah, I mean, I would be working towards 4:20, and which you can probably do on a fresh day anyway, because you're coming back 2 miles after 9:17, which is an impressive double. But you're pretty close there, Ty. You're pretty close with where you need to be. But 5:20, 5:15 to 5:20 is where I live in the tempos. 5:05 to 5:10 is where I live in the threshold work. Okay, let me get this off the screen here. That's where I would live for threshold work and tempo runs. And then you kind of build from there. So obviously the goal to get you to tie 4:20 tie, and then under 4:20. But 9:17 and a 4:25 double, that's pretty good, especially with 2 hours of break. That's a good double. So, does anybody else have any questions about this? Thank you guys for bringing questions. Really, this is good. So, you're welcome, Ty. Mason, can you run in 600 in practice in under 130? If you're still here, can you run a 600 under 130, like a 129, 128? Or can you run 3 times a 500 and 113, 114? Or 114, 115? Those are good things to tell you whether you're close or whether you're ready to get under 2 minutes for the 800. Ty, keep running well, man. Keep running well. That's good work right there. 9:17, 4:25, man. It's a good job. Anybody else have any questions? And again, write this stuff down if you don't have it. This gives you an idea and it allows you to track it yourself, right? And say, okay. And then once I do the 400 and 800 equivalents to the mile, you'll get a much better idea. Especially if you're a coach, and if you know coaches you think might benefit from this, let them know about this. Let them know about the channel, teammates, friends, whatever. Okay, I want to help as many people as possible. I didn't have access to world-class coaches when I was running in college. Ask questions. I didn't have access to, as John McDonald from Arkansas, like Marcus O'Sullivan. Like, those guys are hard to reach, right? Even though I did speak to John McDonald because I coached a kid in high school that went to Arkansas. Sure. But still, I've been fortunate enough to learn from some of these best coaches as well. So I want to share my knowledge and this type of stuff with all of you so you can take advantage of it. And the more you understand, the more you know, the more knowledge you have, the better off it's going to be for you as a coach. It allows you to kind of make adjustments that you might need to make. So, the knowledge is power. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please hit the thumbs up on the way out. Hit that like button. I greatly appreciate you all coming in here. And this is good. So I hope to see you again in a couple days when I do the 400 and 800 equivalents to the mile, because that one's going to be fun too. And again, like this, they'll tell you, okay, I need to get my leg speed on point here to be better in the 4x8, to be better in the 4x4, right? And this will give you a good idea of, okay, I'm ready to step up now in distance. But again, what's going to help you step up in distance is your tempo runs, your threshold work, your VO2 max stuff, right? What's going to help you on the other end, on the flip side, get faster and short? Basic speed development, right? Event-specific stuff. And when I say speed development, I don't mean balls to the wall 400s, balls to it doesn't need to be that way. And again, I'd rather have 3 fast 200s after a tempo run instead of as a workout. Why? Because when are you going to tap into your speed as a distance runner? In the beginning of the race or the end of a race? That's why I do it at the end of tempos, at the end of thresholds, and at the end of runs. You got to tap into that stuff when you're fatigued, right? So sequentially, it makes sense to put that there. Or progression 150s. You haven't heard those. 50 float, 50 stride, 50 sprint. Each 50 gets faster. Teaches you how to change gears multiple times to take the kicks out of people who rely on kicks, right? Edward on the 1709 5K right now, 4:42 mile, 10:01. Yeah, you're based on your current track times, you should be in the 16s, Edward, during cross. I mean, it depends on the type of cross-country courses you run, but you should be, it looks like you're going to be better than 1709. So that's for sure. Absolutely, Edward. So you'll be in the 16s. And again, factor in the courses that you're going to run, right? And cross-country races are a little bit different than track races. So in terms of track, you got to get out hard, right? Establish your position early on. Track and cross country, you could have a long 1,000-meter path and then it narrows into this thing where then you start doing this and going up here and everywhere else. So it really depends on the type of course you're running in cross country. Running Van Cortlandt Park in New York and the Bronx, it's open field for a while before you get into the cow path. So it really depends on where you're racing. But Edward, yeah, 4:42 and 10:01, I think you'll be in a better spot. So any other questions before I wrap it up? I want to thank you all for coming on. This was fantastic. You guys were great. I appreciate the questions too. And you keep training hard, everybody. Keep doing the hard work. Good? All right, gang. Thanks so much for calling on. Have a great season. Talk to you next time.